Hi, fourth grade. Today we're going to go over day 8 and 9 reading. I meant to go through day 8 last night, but we had a lot going on here in the Kite household, so I wasn't able to do that. Now, I just kind of want to go through day 8 reading really quickly. You should have done that yesterday, but I want you to double check your work and make sure it has the information that I'm going to include here today. I'm going to share my screen with you real quick, and we're going to go through it. All right, sorry, takes a minute sometimes. All right, so up here for day 8 reading on yesterday, May 6th, we were supposed to reread Lincoln's Choice. This is our third day reading the story. Then you are going to use your completed sort from day 7 and then write a summary of the story. Our sort looked like this. We had the headers characters, setting, events, conflict, resolution, and theme. This means that in our summary of Lincoln's Choice, we need to include information from our sort. We need to include characters, the setting, events. Something important about this is there are a lot of events in your sort. About 14 is what we counted when we were doing our help sessions live. So make sure you just include the most important events. Which events are most important to the story? The conflict needs to be in there, the resolution and the theme. Your summary should be around 3 to 4 sentences. Since you only have 3 to 4 sentences, you should not include all of the events. So make sure that each one of these from your sort is in your summary. And really quickly, I want us to go through day 8 vocabulary, and while you should have already done this, I wanted to go through one of the trickier ones up here on the circling the root word. So we can see that we have the word podiatrist in here, and that's kind of a big word. Now, podiatrist does not have a prefix, but it does have a suffix. But it's got a suffix in it that we haven't really worked with before. So we're going to talk about that suffix really quick. The suffix in podiatrist is iatrist, iatrist. Iatrist means to heal or healer. Pod is going to be our root. And I'm going to see if I can highlight that really quickly for you. And the reason why I'm telling you this instead of having you work through it is because we haven't worked with this root. We haven't worked with this suffix before. So POD means foot, iatrist, healer. So a podiatrist is a foot healer or a foot doctor. So as you go through, make sure you're looking for, you should know the rest of these prefixes. And yes, they're all prefixes. So you should know the rest of them all have prefixes, and you should be able to find the roots from that. Now let's break down intersection. So I see right away a prefix that I recognize, and that prefix I recognize is INTER. Inter means between. So I'm going to highlight that and I'm going to write that there because I recognize that. And right away, I see the suffix TION. So I'm going to write that down, TION, and that makes my root SEC, which I think it's actually SECT, intersection. So this is my prefix, my root, and my suffix. Right, now let's go ahead and move on to day 9 reading. I know that you can go through the rest of these on your own. So today we're reading a new poem, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read that out loud. While I'm reading the poem, you are going to think about what you're going to do because today we're writing a summary sentence about the poem. Now this is going to be very tricky because you only have one sentence to write your summary in. Now, if you are listening and following along on the screen, I want you to have a 4 square in front of you. All of you have done 4 squares with your teachers. I want you to pay attention to the setting. I want you to pay attention to the characters. I want you to pay attention to the conflict and resolution. Because if I have to do a summary in only one sentence, those are the 4 most important things that I want to make sure I include in my sentence. So as we're reading, make sure you're listening for these. This is Strongest Conviction by Eileen R. Meyer. signing the Emancipation Proclamation. Summer 1862. The nation was divided as the Civil War raged on, the problem Lincoln grappled with, to right the greatest wrong. He gathered his advisers, said, "No man is property." He would proclaim in rebel states, those held as slaves are free. His proclamation fueled debate. Some folks did not agree. Is freedom meant for everyone in our democracy? New Year's Day, 1863. Crowds streamed in past the White House gates to greet the president. He stood for hours to shake each hand, express acknowledgement. When guests were gone, he grasped his pen and sat up straight and tall. He slowly, firmly signed his name. Now liberty for all. Right, now we're going to go back and we're going to talk about each stanza. Now that you've listened to it, now we're going to break down the stanzas. So let's listen to the first stanza. This begins summer 1862, and there are two settings in this poem, so make sure that we are paying attention. And one of the settings gives us a where and one does not. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. The nation was divided as the Civil War raged on, the problem Lincoln grappled with to right the greatest wrong. And right here, I want us to talk about this line, to right the greatest wrong. In this case, the greatest wrong that he is trying to right is, if you said slavery, you are right. He is trying to right the wrong of slavery. He gathered his advisors, said, "No man is property." And again, that shows us Abraham Lincoln's conviction that slavery is wrong. No man should be property. And in Virginia Studies, you should have read that slavery, they treated slaves like property. Your teacher probably talked about it when we were talking about Jamestown. They were treated poorly. They were treated like animals. Families were separated. Mothers and fathers separated from each other, separated from their children. And often they were punished in terrible ways. And so they were treated very, very poorly because people bought them, sold them, and treated them like animals. But Lincoln thought, no, this is not okay. And he was working to right the greatest wrong. Of course, this work he did led to the Civil War. And it led to the Civil War because we can look at the stanza. He would proclaim in rebel states, those held as slaves are free. First of all, rebel states are the southern states that seceded or broke away from the Union being the northern states. The rebel states were the Confederate States of America, where slavery was prevalent. But Lincoln would say, no matter which state you were in, because even during the Civil War, the Union viewed those southern states that seceded, they still viewed them as part of their country, and they made these proclamations saying no. That's why there was this big war, and said, no, these slaves are free. When he made this Emancipation Proclamation, what's really, really important for us to remember is that if he were to proclaim this, if he were to write a document about this, then those held as slaves could leave, travel up north, and they would be recognized as free people. In the next stanza, his proclamation fueled debate. Some folks did not agree. And this is very, very, very important. Like we were just talking about, not everybody agreed with Lincoln that slavery was wrong or that slavery should be abolished. The southern states were very dependent on slave labor for their economies. Is freedom meant for everyone in our democracy? So this question here shows us that Lincoln was really, really struggling with how he should end slavery. Even if other people didn't agree, should he hold fast? Should he sign a document? Should he do this and abolish slavery completely and continue fighting in the Civil War and standing behind it? It had been a long battle. Lots of people died. And the Civil War doesn't end until 1865. So he had to decide if it was worth continuing the war over. Now the setting changes, and we are New Year's Day, 1863. So this is a few months later. Crowds streamed in past the White House gates to greet the president. He stood for hours to shake each hand, to express acknowledgement. So here, President Lincoln is interacting with the people. Sorry. So we know that he's standing there to shake each hand. And where is this happening? There's another thing to add to our setting. Crowds streamed in past the White House. So President Lincoln is in the White House. When guests were gone, he grasped his pen and sat up straight and tall. He slowly, firmly signed his name, "Now liberty for all." When a president signs his or her name to a document, this proclamation becomes law. When their names are signed, they are passing something into law. So now liberty for all. So now he's made this proclamation. He signed his name to it. As president, he is saying all slaves are free. He declared he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and I know that's a big mouthful to say, but it's a very important document because it made slavery illegal. And because it made slavery illegal, slaves were escaping on the Underground Railroad, moving up north, and the South was losing that slave labor as the slaves moved up north towards freedom. So that is our poem. So now let's talk about how we can turn that into a summary sentence. So I said earlier I wanted you to listen for 4 things. And let me see if this will work. All right. Those 4 things being characters, setting, setting, conflict, and resolution. So I'm going to set up a sentence stem for you. So if you're having some trouble trying to condense this into a sentence, you can look at this and decide, you can plug in the important information that you should have in front of you from listening on your Foursquare. So we'll say in and I did point out that there were 2, setting 1 and setting 2. And then in setting 1, this is a when. Setting 2 is a when and a where. In setting 1, character, and then the conflict. So the conflict of the poem. And a, whoop. Sorry guys, sometimes these hotkeys do that. All right, and what could we say? Because the time period was, we said there were a few months. So I'm going to go ahead and give that to you. And a few months later at setting 2, the resolution happened. All right, and that will give us our sentence. So in setting 1, character, conflict, and a few months later at setting 2, the resolution happened. If we can plug those in, we'll have a full summary sentence. All right, so let's go through our writing real quick for today. There's no vocabulary today, but I do want to go ahead and look at our writing. So I'm going to pause the share here, and I'm going to go over to our writing. It'll give me just a minute for it to load. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for being patient with me as I try to work these out and try to figure out all of this video stuff, you know. Mrs. Kite is not a YouTuber. All right, and we'll have our writing, and we're going to writing for day 9, not day 10. All right, so now what we have for day 9 writing is we're revising a different piece of writing from last week. So day 3 of last week, you wrote a journal entry from the point of view of a child during the Civil War. You were supposed to write what you would have seen, what you would have felt, what you would have heard, what things you would be doing if you were alive during the Civil War. I want you to go back and reread your journal entry. You are going to revise and edit your writing. You're going to locate sentences where you can add more details. So we talked about it the other day on a video that when we go through and we're trying to add more details, make sure you're including things such as specifics about what you're doing, specifics about what you're seeing. Use your sensory language. Use all of those interesting words we use this year. So the thing you need to include are adjectives. Adjectives are words that describe a noun. These are your sensory words, guys. These are things like, wow, that was a tasty apple. Tasty is a sensory word. It gives us our 5 senses. Color words are adjectives. It's any word that describes a noun being a person, a place, or a thing. Adverbs. These are words that describes a verb. A verb is an action word. So it's anytime we take an action. To run. Running is a verb. Walking, a verb. Writing, a verb. An adverb describes that verb. So if I'm sitting here and I'm writing by hand. If I say I am writing neatly, neatly is an adverb. Correct punctuation are periods at the end of our sentence. Our commas to separate our ideas in a sentence. Our question marks when we ask a question. And exclamation points when we're excited or we're trying to emphasize our point. Correct capitalization. Follow all the capitalization rules. This means any noun that has a name should be capitalized. Those names are capitalized. I, when referring to yourself, is capitalized. Correct your spelling errors. Use your word study patterns that you learned this year to make sure your spelling is correct. And also, if you need to, use a dictionary because there are a lot of exceptions to spelling rules. And that's it for your reading and writing for today and for yesterday. So I hope you guys have an awesome night tonight. I hope this gave you just a little bit of help today. In the meantime, stay awesome 4th grade, and remember, we're better together. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you later. Whoop. Bye, guys.